John, what's your take on Russia's possible invasion of Ukraine and this the assertion that they were going to actually leak videos, fabricated videos, showing that Ukraine was attacking Russians?
Well, I think that's certainly one possible scenario. Europe has had experience with this before when the Nazis faked an incident along the Polish border in 1939 and invaded on September the 1st. So the Russians can simply copy that if that's what they have in mind. But I think the bigger picture here is that Putin really has the initiative at this moment. He's calling the shots. He's playing the tune. We're reacting. We don't have a strategy. I think he's got a wide range of options, starting from splitting NATO, which we're already doing a pretty good job of ourselves, to taking some piece, if not all, of the Ukraine, or doing something in another former part of the Soviet Union, Georgia, Belarus. I don't think we really know what he's going to do. I don't think he does either, because he's still weighing the costs and benefits. But as I say, he has the initiative, and that's never good.
And how significant is this unholy alliance with China? We know that China, Russia and Iran have been doing joint military exercises. They've now got a 30-year deal on gas, as Russia, one of the biggest energy exporters, and China, one of the biggest energy consumers, while Europe is flailing around, struggling with rising energy prices. I mean, they've stitched this up quite nicely, haven't they? And the West should be very afraid.
Well, it's certainly moving, again, in the wrong direction. This tendency of the Russians and the Chinese to work more closely together has been evident for a long time in the UN Security Council, for example. Whenever you try and go after North Korea's nuclear weapons program, China protects North Korea with Russian support. When you go after Iran's nuclear weapons program, Russia protects Iran with China's support. And as you say, they've got Russia's a supplier of oil and gas, China's a big consumer. So there are a lot of things here that put them together. It would be in the interest of the West to prevent that closeness from developing any further, but it's very hard to see how to do that. I think ultimately this is not going to be in Russia's interest. They're going to be China's junior partner as we go through the rest of the century. But as of now, they both see it as being something that benefits them in their respective zones.
I mean, the difficulty is, of course, when we're talking about the West, it seems to be an ever-dwindling pool of people, because it seems to me that Germany doesn't want to play ball and is becoming increasingly aligned with the Kremlin, that France has sort of left the room, the EU are proposing their own military solutions and armies, undermining NATO, which itself is very fractured. I mean, is it just basically the UK, US, and a little bit of Australia now?
Yeah. Well, personally, I would follow former Spanish Prime Minister Jose Maria Aznar's suggestion to expand NATO and bring in Australia, bring in Singapore, Japan, Israel. Look, we're going to have a reckoning here, I think, with some of our friends in Europe. Germany, among other things, still not living up to the commitment it voluntarily made to spend 2% of its GDP on defense, and time's running out to get to, as we get to 2024 when they were supposed to reach that objective. I understand Germany's past. I think we all do. But they have interpreted it exactly backwards. Given what they've done in the last century, Germany ought not be passive, standing in the background. Germany, among all European countries, should be the one that says we will not tolerate the use of military force to change borders on the continent of Europe. And instead, last week, despite all the needs Ukraine has, Germany offered A, field hospital, and B, 5,000 military helmets.
Is there also the risk here that, but due to that chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan and the country essentially falling back to the Taliban after 20 years of trying to prevent exactly that, that some of the West's enemies are emboldened and perhaps Biden's leadership is not what we need it to be?
Yeah, I think there's no question but that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a catastrophic strategic mistake for the U.S. and NATO. I think Putin and Xi Jinping have read it as a sign of weakness. I think they're correct about the weakness of the Biden administration. I don't think that's where the country is, but Biden presumably is president for the next 3 years. So this is going to be the subject of a huge debate in this country. And I think if we see a Russian military invasion of Ukraine and a seizure of whole or even part of the country, I think that's going to have very, very negative effects on us and our friends and allies as well.
And, I mean, there has been potentially some good news in terms of American foreign policy, with the leader of the Islamic State being wiped out the other day. Is that indicative, perhaps, now of America getting a bit more bite again and saying, we're boss, we're not going to be pushed around?
Yeah. Well, I'll just put it this way, because I don't want to get into anything that could be deemed classified, but these operations don't happen overnight. When Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Quds Force, got his early exit some time back, these operations take a while to prepare. So ultimately, when you get a chance to act on the target, you take it, even if it's been a long time since you started. It was the right thing to do, absolutely. But the real threat of Islamic terrorism comes from its appeal in parts of the world where they can find safe harbors. And eliminating al-Qurayshi, which is a good thing for humanity as a whole, doesn't significantly reduce the threat of international terrorism, unfortunately.